This might be interesting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Municipality of Monroeville's Citizen Night and Council Work Session. If we'd all kindly rise for the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, before I open up Citizens Night, I'm going to ask Chief Cole to please come on up. I'm going to change the agenda a little bit. He has 2 letters that he does need to read into the record. And Chief, when you're done, if you'd hand me the list of the residents that have signed in. Thank you.
Do you have one for me? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a lot of it.
Thank you.
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to read these letters that were addressed to me as the Chief of Police in Monroeville. They're both from the Pennsylvania State Police, and they date, the first one's dated April 20th, the second one's dated July 17th. The reason I'm reading these letters into the record is because there's been some, we'll just say there's been information that's been put out that may not be properly represented concerning what we're doing at the dispatch center and what we do with our CREA, our criminal history record information, as well as what we do with our NCIC clean access. And it all ties back into the events that occurred obviously last year. And I want to make sure that the public understands that we are, keeping this to a standard. We've actually even volunteered to be part of a audit by the federal government here on October 23rd, 2014. The FBI, Criminal Justice Information Center, will be here to do an audit of a local agency, is what we're called. In addition, the Pennsylvania State Police routinely, every 2 years, audits us, and their audit's coming up next week, September 10th, Wednesday of next week. So we are obviously participating quite readily in both of those audits and look forward to any input that they have, and certainly to look at our system that we believe is meeting all the requirements. The first letter, and I'll paraphrase some of these, and they'll be available, obviously, I got a couple extra copies, I think, once it goes around, but I'll read one letter, the entire letter, but the one dated April 20th was just by statute. It's, again, coming from the Pennsylvania State Police, 1800 Embleton Avenue in Harrisburg, addressed to me. By statute, the Pennsylvania State Police is required to conduct an annual audit of at least 5% of all the municipal department plans, policies, and procedures which are implemented pursuant to Section 9106 of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code. This section addresses information in central repositories or automated systems, and more specifically, the storage, and dissemination of protected information within those systems. The purpose of the audit is to ensure that your department has plans, policies, and procedures in place relative to the dissemination of protected information that are in accordance with the statute. I am pleased to advise that an audit of your department's policies and procedures was conducted on April 20th, 2014, and there were no discrepancies identified. And then, thank you, blah, 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 Richard Huff, Intelligence Analyst Supervisor. So that was back in April. In July, prior to that, certainly since the first part of this year, it actually started in 2013, but we cooperated fully with the Pennsylvania State Police Commonwealth Law Enforcement Assistance Network, which is called CLEAN, and that's also part of the National Crime Information Center, CLEAN NCIC. That's how we in the department access any criminal history information or get any information like driver's license, phone it actually goes through Clean to PennDOT to get your driver's license information, ownership on cars. We also enter all our stolen vehicles, stolen guns, stolen articles, that type of stuff in the system. I'll read this letter here. Again, addressed to me, dated July 17, 2014, from the Pennsylvania State Police. A Commonwealth Law Enforcement Assistant Network misuse investigation was completed by Corporal Louis Serafini. This investigation was initiated after allegations of possible Clean NCIC misuse surfaced pertaining to the possible dissemination of criminal justice information via Monroeville Alert TS CAD being computer-aided dispatch system. While it was noted through the Attorney General's Office investigation that there were CRIA, meaning Criminal History Record Information Act, violations found within the Monroeville Police Department, at this time there is no evidence that the Clean NCIC misuse occurred. Through interviews, it was suggested that upon installation of the Alert TS system, there may have been some information coming from NCIC Clean that may have been placed into CAD, meaning computer-aided dispatch calls. But it was learned that this practice was stopped once your department became aware of the issue. Due to the lack of specific incidents where this occurred and the fact that no physical evidence is present to suggest whether this occurred or not, this will be carried as an unfounded complaint or an unfounded investigation. I'll explain what unfounded means in a second here. During a February meeting in which Clean administrative personnel attended, it was suggested routine checks of the Monroeville Police Department by the Clean administrative section would take place to ensure your department remains compliant with Clean NCIC policies and procedures. Triennially, I guess a 3-year audit, will take place in the fall of 2014 to precede an FBI criminal justice information audit that will occur in October. As I stated earlier, September 10th is the date for the state police audit. The federal government audit is on October 23rd. While the Clean administrative section recognizes that your department personnel were cooperative during the investigation, it is still our responsibility to uphold the integrity of the system and to investigate all allegations of Clean NCIC misuse. This letter shall serve as a notice at this time the investigation into Clean NCIC misuse at the Monroeville Police Department is unfounded. Again, I'll tell you what unfounded is under investigation. If you have any questions concerning the contents of this letter and misuse investigation, please feel free to contact me. A phone number, and it's Sergeant Kevin P. Smith, Clean Section Supervisor. Now, unfounded in there states the following: an unfounded investigation is the allegation was false or not factual. That's what unfounded means.
Could you
That's
repeat
a
that?
standard policy. Say again?
Could you repeat that?
And that, when an allegation is listed as unfounded, it's the allegation was false or not factual. So that's what the state police did. Now, I can tell everybody here in the listening audience, and certainly I report to you, Mayor, Council, and Municipal Manager, we cooperated fully with this investigation. Those corporals, there was actually 2 corporals from the state police, spent many hours here, interviewed many people, including myself, interviewed the proprietor, meaning the Alert TS system, the management people by conference call in Ohio, interviewed, I believe even the manager said it on some of the interviews that were taking place we had. So I know that they looked at that because that was one of the major concerns we had when we started to rehire these dispatchers. Because if the dispatchers would not have had access to NCIC Clean, they could not have been rehired. And that's the reason we made the decision to rehire, because their investigation found it to be unfounded. So I just wanted to set the record straight there. Obviously, we can put these letters on the website or do whatever you want. They're letters they know they're going to be disseminated. Mayor?
Very good, thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Good job, Chief.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, before I open up to the Citizens Night, I do have some comments I would like to make in regards to the investigation, all the allegations of last year, and there are lawsuits involved as well. I'm recommending to this council that from this day forward, until all the lawsuits are settled, I, as the mayor, and I am recommending to every council member here not to respond to any questions on this issue. Just for the simple fact is, they are in litigation. Now, there's nobody trying to hide anything, but again, remember what I said. There is litigation on all the issues concerning the former chief, the former manager, and others. Secondly, I've heard from many of you, the residents, you're tired of hearing about it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, folks, when the lawsuits are all settled, I assure you, as I've stated many, many times, on any of the reports, if by law we are allowed to release them, if there's any way that we can get it out there, I assure you, I will put it out there for your review. You can get your own copy. It's very easy to do. As a matter of fact, whatever it is, I'll even ask if it's permissible to even put it on the website, any information once everything is resolved. But that might be a year from now, that might be 3 years from now. I do not have any control on the court system. So I hope everybody here, as well as in the listening audience, understand we are not trying to hide anything, but there is litigation involved in all of these issues, and it's been by our own solicitor, as well as a couple other solicitors that I've addressed this issue with. They have recommended we stay silent. And with that, I'll open up the Citizens Night proportion of the meeting. And we'll go to Dr. Norm Edelstein. If you'll please come on up, state your name for the record. You have already signed in. You do not have to give your address.
Thank you. My name is Norman Edelstein. I'm a resident of Monroeville. I represent the Red Oak Court Homeowners Association. It's 2 blocks of neighbors and taxpayers. The municipality has been maintaining our street for over 2 decades without a formal acceptance of Red Oak Court. We've been asking for years what is realistically an administrative formality. We asked that Monroeville honor its stated obligation and pass the ordinance needed to eliminate any concept that Red Oak Court is a private road. We're at this point unwilling to continue to have these requests ignored and live with uncertainty and safety fears. I'd like to review the issues which may be new to many of you on council and correct a few misconceptions which were offered last month by Mr. Dice, Mr. Hugus, when Mr. Caruso represented us. Red Oak Court was completed and deemed completed to standards 15 years ago. Mr. Dice, as solicitor at that time in writing, stated that the municipality was obligated to maintain the road at no expense to the homeowners and to accept the road once the top coat was put on, which it was. He sent letters to me in various correspondences then and thereafter, and although he mentioned last month that they were to a private citizen, I think that when he thinks about it, and I know Bruce is busy, that I represented the homeowners then, and I have been the elected president of that organization for many, many years. At that time, there were some questions about paying for completion of the road because the municipality had to go to the bonding company. The formal developers did not complete it. It was completed. Streetlights, top coat. It was completed. Mr. Dice said that in his letters. There was litigation when they went to the bonding company because the municipality was alleged by the bonding company didn't approach them in a timely manner. Perhaps there was some embarrassment at that time for municipal officials, and maybe that was the reason the Homeowners Association's ongoing efforts to get the ordinance formalized were not addressed. However, let's move forward and just note that Mr. Dice had mentioned also at the last meeting that the Homeowners Association is to send a letter requesting this. We've been doing that for 15 years. It's in record. There's files. Moving forward, and most recently, on May 2nd, I had a nice discussion with Mr. Hugus, the engineer. He was not aware of some of this, and I sent him documents. And he also mentioned to me that, let alone was he disturbed about this, he was disturbed because there's tax benefits from the state to maintain the road that you haven't been receiving all these years. I waited 6 weeks, and in June, I called the engineering department 3 times, and I couldn't get a reply. And in August, at Citizens Night, the road had not been inspected after 3 months, and it was questioned by the engineer at that time whether the street lights and top coat were there. They were in place for 15 years. And prior to this meeting, I met Mr. Hugus in the hall, and he's found the file finally, and is going through it, but the road was completed. Myself and another member of the Homeowners Association met in July with Mr. Little. He sent this issue to Mr. Dice in September. So again, 4 months go by. We haven't heard anything. In summary, I'm the elected president of 2 blocks of streets in Monroeville. I have a large file on this with Shelley Cottonbaugh involved, Marshall Bond, and so forth. The question is, we have enjoyed basically the same residents there on our street for many years. Most of them are older. As a physician, I had a disturbing event occur in June when people knew I was trying to get the engineering department to respond. And we had someone with a health issue who expressed fear that the cavalier approach by the engineering department, it's a private road, what happened if that was extrapolated and assistance was denied when needed on an emergent nature by, let's say, a dispatcher? It's a valid safety concern, and none of your constituents should live in fear because there is no difference between having this ordinance in effect or not, other than the term it's a private road. You're responsible for the road. The taxpayers have paid their taxes for decades. You've provided services with snow removal and garbage pickup. The solicitor acknowledged 15 years ago the municipality, in writing, was responsible for the street and had the obligation to pass the ordinance and accept Red Oak Court. So we ask that this long overdue ordinance, which is a formality, be passed with dispatch and eliminate for 2 blocks of taxpayers and voters the long-term uncertainty and safety concerns. Thank you. If there are any questions I can answer, anything I can help with, I gave our council person, Paul, copies of those letters. My current mailing address and so forth is on the back. This is, maybe some of you haven't heard about this, or anything I can answer. We don't understand why this hasn't been done. Do any of you understand why this hasn't been done?
Well, Dr. Edelstein, as you well know, you and I have had conversation, and I've had conversations with another resident that on your street as well. And I would recommend to council that we place this on the agenda for next Tuesday. And it's just a matter of us just voting on this. We've been taking care of the road, as the man has said, for many, many years. It is apparent, and it is in black and white from Mr. Dice, that it meets all the standards. So I don't know why we're not doing that.
This is the first I'm hearing of it, but there's no structural defects or anything, right, Paul? I mean,
We have not had the opportunity to go do a full inspection of the development,
Why
that-
would that be when we contacted you on May 2nd?
because,
It's 4 months.
understand it, again, we have not had the opportunity to go do a full inspection.
so would we do that prior to?
Typically, yes. How the
Do you
process,
have an objection to
process-
that?
I have no objection, other than the fact that if you read the letters that you have a copy of, in 1999, or 1998, when they were getting this completed, Mr. Dice, your solicitor, said that it meets, he stated that, it meets standards, other than the top coat was being put on. Why wasn't it done then? We asked.
I don't know, I can't answer
So
that.
all of a
This is the
sudden,
first I'm
15
hearing
years
of it.
later, you want to do an inspection when we asked for this most recently on May 2nd. It just doesn't seem fair, and people are at risk, and it's,
Well, how much time will the inspection take?
You need to ask Paul that.
Paul?
we could have it done by next month's meeting. I mean, typically, the process is, once the manager receives a request, we'll do an inspection of the development, provide any defects or inefficiencies that have occurred, have you, that way you know what's going on, and then you have the decision.
Well, this is in my ward. I would just really ask Mr. Little, Mr. Hugus, if we could just expedite this process any way possible. I know you located the file, you've been diligently going through it. Just keep me up to date, and, let's get this done as efficiently and quickly as possible.
Yeah, but I got another spin to that. It's in black and white from our own solicitor that it met all the standards. What are we doing?
I mean,
I
is
don't
there an
know the answer to
objection
that,
to
correct.
one
Well,
more
no,
month?
I just have one question. Let's assume there was a deficiency. Mr. Dice said in his letters that the residents then and in the future have no responsibility for any expenses relative to Red Oak Court. Therefore, if you found a deficiency, it seems moot because it's not our responsibility to take care of it because you're responsible for the road. So
See, I'm sorry.
why are we going through this? We have no objection to inspecting it, but
I don't know, I was just asking protocol. Again, this is news to me.
we
And do
realize-
we anticipate there are deficiencies? I mean,
I don't anticipate deficiencies, no,
then
because
I don't see an issue.
why couldn't somebody get down
Yeah.
today to tomorrow and look at the road?
Yeah, that's, if we can get Paul
I have a
available.
question.
Surely.
What's happened the past 14 years?
We keep going back. I mean, I'll give you an example.
No, I'm just asking.
Oh, not,
I mean, you presented this to councils 14 years ago?
no, we presented this on and off. We don't understand the reason. That's why I keep saying, was somebody embarrassed about the bonding issue? We don't even know who paid to finish the road because it was in litigation, but all of a sudden, the streetlights were put in. Maybe it was taxpayer dollars and somebody at the municipality didn't address this correctly. We don't know, but who cares? It's 14 years later. What we're trying to do, and what got us upset, is if at the highest levels of this municipality, the first response of your engineers is a private road, If we have somebody that's worried that if they get sick, are we going to be serviced? It's moved beyond just minimal issues, and
Well,
it needs to be
my
done.
comment, I had a question and a comment, and the comment was, you'd never be denied municipal emergency services. If you're within the boundaries of Monroeville, I mean, it's like the private property of the Monroeville Mall. They still go there for,
We would hope.
I guarantee
Yeah,
you.
but people should, all right. Yes.
Doc, they would be there, that's a fact. But I'm in concert with you. I think that since it's already been reduced to writing, maybe, Paul, if you can get you or Jamie out there and take a look.
What
at the
questions does Paul have at this time that he hasn't been able to properly inspect the area?
I mean, there's a procedure that we go through that we have to look at. I mean, we do core borings of the street to make sure the roads are the right amount of asphalt put on. You know, we look to see, I know the streetlights have been put in, the sidewalks have not been installed, but there's a checklist we have to go through, and that's what we present to council. That's typically our procedure. If that's what you want me to do, that's what we'll do. If
Well,
not,
was that never done before?
I don't know that because I haven't gone through the
It was
entire
done.
file.
Mr. Dice says in his letter,
I understand you said,
Yeah.
Mr. Dice, I'm asking
Yeah.
if he has read in the file.
I have not
and
gone
have-
through all
Saw
the
the
files.
report that this was completed.
Well, when Mr. Dice
Protocol.
made those comments, did he have records that said that this had been completed, the inspection had been completed?
The packet I set in front of everybody is actually the correspondence back from Mr. Dice, almost verbatim. Dr. Edelstein recited it to you, and
I will say, I didn't write the letter. However, any type of engineering reliability would go from the engineer. From a legal standpoint, he'd be writing the letter and stating whether you complied with the MTC provisions. If there's something that would be, from an engineering standpoint, that would come from the engineering department.
Even
However,
though-
I have not read the letter.
well, if you look on October 8th, Mr. Dice said, "In relation to your situation at Red Oak Court reveals that the road has been installed in accordance with applicable municipal standards."
And given that, and I understand in 1999, I mean, I was very young.
Paragraph bubble.
This is, I mean, we have to accept accountability for this. I mean, going forward, we need to take a look at this now, real quickly.
I agree.
Get this taken care of for these residents.
Ladies and gentlemen, I
Move
nitpicked this
forward.
with him to the point that when he sent a letter and he called it Red Oak Drive, I had him issue another letter correcting it to Red Oak Court so that there'd be no question about this. Nobody understands why this has gone on so long.
Right.
But people are afraid, and that's not right, you know?
But I do agree with Dr. Edelstein. The fact is that there is deficiencies, who's going to fix them? There
That's
is
what
no
we-
more development.
We need to talk about that, because if there were no deficiencies in 1999, when this should have happened,
Can I
That's our
please-
fault.
Can I please read into the letter something else?
Sure.
Mr. Dice said, once again, the homeowners along Red Oak Court, he said Drive, it's Court, will not be required to make any payments to the municipality concerning expenses for Red Oak Court, both now and in the future. I do not think I can say it any more plainly than I have at this time. If you have any questions, contact me. But I can't say it any more plainly either. Mr. Dice is your solicitor. He spoke as your solicitor. He said it.
let's get it done.
I agree.
If this can be done next Tuesday, it makes sense.
I didn't write it, so.
And we can't speak for the former council.
Now, obviously, the
Saying
prior
something
council
like-
just didn't follow up, I guess. I'm assuming that's what happened, but I certainly don't know that.
No.
Whether there was a reason or whatever.
I mean, this has been going, I have an email that I sent Marshall Bond this in 205, saying, you know, what's going on? And he said, that's a good question, and he sent it to Mr. Dice. We never heard, I mean, it kept going on and on, but it's reached the point that with some of the issues that have come up with people being afraid, no, we said, we just can't sit back anymore despite these protective letters. We want the ordinance passed.
And I understand your frustration. This is not going to get put on the back burner. We'll get
Thank-
this taken care of immediately.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
You're
your
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Chuck Somerville, if you will, please. State your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Chuck Somerville. I live in Colgate Drive in Monroeville.
You didn't have to give your address, Chuck, you know that, but go ahead.
Okay. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Monroeville Jazz Festival Board of Directors. I am the president and producer of the Monroeville Jazz Festival and have done so for the past 12 years. The weather was perfect, the crowd was outstanding, the artists were fantastic, and the community support was overwhelming. I wish to thank the following people who helped make the festival a success. The festival board members, including Jeannie Somerville, Nina Pavlik, Dee Dee Fry, Tom Reichner, Debbie Izuk, Heather Victor, Pat Boyle, Patty Moore, Paul Nagy, and a large group of volunteers. I also wish to thank Paul Estock from the Parks Department, Mike Adams and Johnny Hizzy from the Public Works Department, Mark Schiflo from the Zoning Department for our temporary signs at the corner of 22 and 48, and also Tim Little, the municipal manager, as well as a large group of other municipal employees. I wish to thank all of our food vendors who sold food, beverages, and desserts to the attending crowd. I wish to thank all the businesses that supported the festival with money and in-kind services. And I wish to thank all the volunteers from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, the beneficiary of the festival, in cash and non-perishables. We are planning next year's festival starting in October. If anyone in this audience or the TV audience would like to become an active volunteer for the festival, please do so by going to our website, monroevillejazz.org, and click the tab called Volunteers. Thank you for your time and your support.
You always do a great job, Chuck. Thank you. I like your new name, by the way, Mark.
Did I miss it again, Mark?
It's okay. I had to give it to him.
I even asked him here about 10 minutes ago. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We like harassing him anyway. Robert Davis.
500th variation of that last name I've experienced over my lifetime.
Try it phonetically.
My name's Robert Davis. I live at 114 Asbury Court. I moved into Monroeville in 1962. So when I come to a meeting, I'm serious. I feel like Bill Murray from Groundhog Day. We're back on the road, Cabot Road. I don't know if anybody recalls what we went through for 29 months and when we had to leave our homes up on Asbury Court by the back road, through the woods, up through Alpine Village for 29 months till the new road was repaired. This spring, we started noticing some subsidence in the road. In June, I came up to the engineering department, talked upstairs. Nobody was available. I left my name, address, and phone number. I said, could somebody please call me? I have some questions. No answer, no call. July, I came back up, made the same information, called back, no call. My career, I was the vice president of Hartford Insurance Company, and I learned one thing. When somebody calls, you return a call. If within 24 hours, that's proper procedure. I came back up here in August to ask about the road. Everybody on our area is concerned about the road, and then I'll explain to you the concerns of the road, because this is called preventative maintenance. It's like if you have a bad heart, and they'll go in and do bypass so you don't have something really bad happen to you. We need preventative maintenance on the road. I came up this time, I talked to a young man who was very helpful. By the way, when I came up the first two times, I was told, the road's on a list. They're going to get to it and fix it, but not right now. We have a lot of other roads that are more permanent. This time I was told, the road's not on a list, we're observing it. And I said, you know, the road is subsiding approximately this much, and there's a huge crack in the asphalt. I was told, no, Mr. Davis, very politely, the young man was very polite, it's only subsided an inch. Janet Oshevsky, who lives in our neighborhood, one of our neighbors, has taken pictures. Unfortunately, she couldn't bring the pictures tonight. Her mother's in the hospital. Here's what my concerns are, and here's what's going to happen. The road sank enough to where the sewer's stuck up. My son was coming up to visit me. This was a number of months ago before they hit the sewer, broke a tire. So they did come out and put asphalt around the tire. I believe there's 2 buses, school buses, that go up there twice a day, which is 8 trips up and down, up and down. I was told that that road could not collapse or that road could not slide over the hill. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But I had people that I know a little bit about engineering, and it told me you never know till the road is investigated to see what could actually happen. Now here, ladies and gentlemen, here's the concern. I am going to guarantee you one thing will happen. The way the road comes down in the bend, they have cones on it about 4 feet into the road where the sewer is, they have cones on it. So when people come down on the bend, they swing out on the road to avoid the cones, and the people coming up on the roadside, and I don't know, does everybody know where the new, across from, you know where that road is? They built a new wall on 22. The cars that are coming up, we've almost had some head-on collisions, because you got people coming down that sometimes they come from Alpine Village, maybe they're not aware, and they swing out around the cone, going faster than they should, and people are coming up, because we have a car dealership down there now, that people use that road to test drive their vehicles, and they come firing up the road. So we got two problems, what I look at. We got a concern, what's happening with the road? Are we going to go through having to have the road tore up and shut down? Number one. Number two, are we going to have a catastrophe with a bus? I talked about a bus. What about if a kid's on that bus, something happens and a bus goes over the hill? Could it happen? Probably. Maybe not. It's very remote. But this is a heavy concern, and I know there's bigger issues, but I'm telling you, this is something that needs to be looked in. Like I said, I came up and did my part, tried to talk to somebody. The young man that did talk to me from engineering was most helpful. The last thing is, being a longtime resident, and I hope, Mayor, what you said, you're going to give full disclosure, because sometimes all this publicity that's happened, you know, I'm the last road in Monroeville. I tell people I live in Murraysville, because it isn't good publicity that we have going on in the papers. And all the waste of money for people that get terminated and then that, it is embarrassing. And I'm glad Chief Cole is back. I would like to tip my hat who was involved with that. My first councilman was a man by the name of George Dale. You probably don't remember George. But when I called George, he was there. But here again, please take a look at it, because this is a serious incident. I'm 78 years old. My wife and I, we go down that road very cautious. But we have a number of kids. We got buses. We got kids coming up from Alpine Village in their cars. And there's going to be a bad accident. If you would, Mayor, if you would drive down that road one time, you could foresee, because it's blind when you go around the bend. Anybody else from our contingency of fine people? But last but not least, I feel that with the number of years I've lived in Monroeville and paid taxes, I love the borough. That's the reason I stayed. That's the reason when I moved, I rebuilt and built a new home. I stayed in Monroeville. And I'm proud of Monroeville, and that's the reason I've been here since 1962, many years. So thank you, and I hope we get some resolve on looking into the road on Cabot Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. And just to answer, to reassure you, if we can release any of the documents after everything's settled, I assure you it will happen.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
just respond real quick?
You sure can.
Myself, Jamie Story, as well as the superintendent have been out to Cabot Road. We acknowledge that there's a problem and it's on a to-do list.
But is there anything that you need to do prior to actually, whatever it is?
Mike wants to talk, we have to repair the problem.
Can you put some kind of signage or something before the bend so that maybe people are more aware of what's coming? That he seems to be concerned about a head-on collision?
Well, what are the cones?
Maybe something like that would at least help temporarily.
What are the cones there for?
So maybe if they put something prior to the bend.
I know the bend you're talking
I
about.
don't
That
even-
is a big bend, too.
Paul, is that
Actually, your
is that a
car
sinkhole?
goes to a sideway dip. Both ways, up and.
So it's a failed storm sewer.
There's a problem with the storm sewer.
Say it again?
There's a problem with the storm sewer.
Yeah, I was up there, and I saw it's definitely a sinkhole, and I know
We
exactly.
can add
what-
some additional signage until the repair is completed.
Do we have any idea when we're going to get to that?
I'll have to ask Michael that.
Mike?
It's possible we could do that possibly next week. I'll take a better look. I think the issue was that we weren't sure of what's causing the sinkhole. I mean, we could throw asphalt in there, that's not gonna say it's not gonna,
It's not going to correct the problem.
well, it may still sink.
I think we have a pretty good idea what's.
Did we
going on.
camera the pipe, Mike, or?
No, I didn't see anything wrong with the storm,
No.
the catch basin or the storm sewer.
Pipe's okay.
And what would be causing?
Well, it's safe to say for the residents up in that
I
area.
mean, we
you
can
wanna
get it
take a
filled
better
with
look at it.
asphalt and then go from there. If it still settles, then, we're gonna have to do,
And you're all gonna, you can put some signage up as
Some-
they're asking.
Yeah,
That would be
but I mean,
helpful,
I don't know.
to put some more asphalt down, some signage.
Yeah, but will they keep adding asphalt?
Would they have to see if it continues to settle or not?
When they did the first time, when they took it down, clear down to the support, they took it clear down to the,
You know what, if for anybody would like to, excuse me,
we're down almost the same level.
why don't you come on up to the microphone, because council can't hear you.
Can't hear you, sorry.
Just
And
for
probably the
record, this-
listening audience can't hear you
This
either.
particular area has been under construction for maybe three different times that it's failed.
Really?
Years ago, and the last construction was done was the Soldier Beam Wall along 22 there, and it held up for a few years, and we don't know exactly what's
What's
causing
causing
it.
I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what's going on with it, we just have to.
May I ask
I'm Herman
what-
Robinson, I live on Asbury Court also. When they replaced that road, they took it clear down almost to the same level as 22. I mean, they took all the dirt out, where they got rebuilt or whatever, but they took it from the firm back up. And yet, it's the settlement, the same thing, and I'm the one who reported it the first time. And it's doing the same thing. It's coming, I think, from that sewer, the pipe that goes under it, it's getting water and causing it to settle down. And it's settled down more than an inch, I'll
Oh,
guarantee you
yeah,
that.
it is, I saw it.
And,
If you'll sign in also, sir,
Yeah.
on that paper.
Why haven't we returned phone calls? I mean, that's my question.
Yeah, I received, you know what, I was very patient.
You want to come on up? We have a middle mic.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
And I understand things happen and people are busy, but when I went up, I left my name, my address, and my phone number. In fact, I put my Noble number down also. So I went up twice, and then third time I did talk to a young man from the engineering department. Very helpful. We spent about 15 minutes talking to me, and he was very helpful. And I said, well, I'm going to come to a meeting and talk and try to bring this to your attention. Because very candidly, I just don't want to see something bad happen that we're all going to feel bad for, especially if it's a school bus.
Mr. Hugus, what do you think is the problem? You said you think you know. What is it?
The bottom of the pipe is not even with the bottom of the catch basin. The water is getting underneath of the pipe, which is creating a void, and the pipe is settling.
I got it.
Can we bring the height of the catch basin up?
I was just going to
You're
ask
gonna have
that.
to, at the minimum, you have to pour a bottom within the catch basin,
Right.
so the water goes into the pipe instead of underneath the pipe.
Underneath.
I'd
But the
suggest we
problem,
give
the
that a
problem
shot.
now is that, you have some settlement there, so
what I
you're gonna
thought.
have to, mill off that section and replace it with asphalt.
Michael, you think you'd be able to get
Yeah,
through
we
that?
can do that. I was unaware that the
I understand.
issue was coming from that catch basin. That's been inspected before. I didn't know there was any water running
But I think
underneath the pipe.
if you could put a temporary, some sort of a sign to give a heads up to people coming down over the hill.
Yeah, we'll do that.
They
Yeah,
will
we
do that.
can- that's no problem.
Because a lot of times, they don't even stop at that stop sign.
Right, I know, yeah,
They come
I've
up over
seen
that
it.
stop sign, they think they're at Kennywood.
Sure, I agree.
All right, thanks,
I
guys, I
mean,
appreciate
it's a
it.
pretty simple fix, as
Yeah.
far as keying it out in a
The
slide
winter's
area
yeah.
and filling it in.
All right.
We'll
thank
get
you.
on it right away.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And once again, thank you, folks, for bringing the issue to us. As you see, it does pay to come to a meeting, and we do encourage you, all of you, listening audience as well as here, to continue to do so. We will address the issues, certainly. Ralph Greco.
I wanted to talk about the.
State your name for the record officially, Ralph.
Ralph Greco, resident of Monroeville.
There you go.
Mark, did we have a picture of the, coming on the northern pipe from the Indian Temple when it's colored? Right there.
I spoke about this before, and I'm going to speak about it again. This is Northern Pike here. This is Temple's new road. This is going to be so dangerous because it's so icy on that road during the wintertime. The salt trucks have to come up it because they can't go down it. The other thing is, if somebody's coming out of this road trying to make a left-hand turn, it's a very steep grade. They're hardly going to be able to go up the hill. And even if they're going down the hill, they're going to have a terrible time with the traffic, because the traffic always goes over the speed limit there. And I think personally that someone's going to end up getting killed there. There's springs there. And on top of that, I just recently found out that this land right in here is all landslide prone. When did we start building stuff on landslide prone areas? Is that common?
Ralph, I'm going to, after everybody that's done speaking on this issue, if there's others that are going to address it, I think you'll understand what I'm going to say. So continue on, because I don't believe so. I don't think that that's standard practice at all.
And there's a lot of landslide prone areas here.
Ralph, to try to answer your question briefly, I was at the planning commission meeting, which as you folks were also. I'd spoken to Mr. Dice about this pretty extensively, and I understand timbering trees in a landslide-prone area is a no-no. The judge threw that out of court. This is basically the same thing with the exception. This is how it was explained to me. Because they are building where they're taking out the trees and putting retaining walls, but there's still some questions about that.
Okay. Are these the same retaining walls that they put behind sheets?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
That's what I was
Yeah,
told.
I understand. I don't know the answer.
They built them exactly the same the way they intend to, and they came down. And these people on Bird Drive have their backyards are like this.
I know.
Already. And there already is some shifting without somebody going in there and disturbing it. They claim that at last meeting we were here that the temple, that it's going to make it could possibly make it stronger. Well, that's not going to help the people when their yards are gone.
I agree.
And there's not much room now. Trying to.
Anything else for us, Ralph?
I just don't understand how you can allow building to go on when a property's landslide prone. That's about all I got to say.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thanks.
Stan Pittman.
Good evening. Stan Pittman. I am a resident of Monroeville, and I'm here to shed some light on the temple as well. My first area of concern is the construction of one of the retaining walls. Ralph was asking questions about the retaining wall. There will be multiple retaining walls of multiple heights. The one I'm most concerned about, it will be constructed at a 20-foot cut slope through colluvial soils. They are planning to use a soldier pile wall, which according to Mike, just a couple speakers ago, was the same type of wall that was built along Cabot that lasted a couple of years. The factor of safety rating for this wall is 1.5. For those of you that don't know factors of rating, that's minimal. That's the bare minimal acceptable. My primary concern, though, is not just the wall, but the condition of the property in total. I've walked this property and I've walked the adjacent property on many occasions. There are several visible indicators of a bad situation. This area is well known for red beds and landslide-prone bedrock. The majority of this property exceeds the 25% threshold, which is considered to be landslide-prone, and a significant portion of this property exceeds 35%. It's my understanding that prehistoric landslides have been identified, and those areas remain landslide prone. I've seen myself the presence of groundwater and water seeps. With the naked eye, you can see that there is minimal vegetation. Many of the trees are old, they're leaning, they're twisted, scarred, they have exposed roots. Many are dead or are being choked out by an overabundance of vines. There's a buildable soil at the base, obviously coming from soil above, because it's all in the northern tier of the tree. There are down trees all across the property, and the plan calls for removing additional trees. All of this causes considerable concern to me. So my question is, what considerations are going to be given for the stabilization of the property above the construction site, not at the construction site? The test core samples indicate a significant presence of shell and claystone, or bedrock, which is one of the most common causes for landslides in Pennsylvania. The other primary culprit in Pittsburgh, or in Pennsylvania in general, are the Pittsburgh red beds, which are also present at this location. Now, I will agree that studies reveal that landslides are rare under natural conditions. However, disturbance at the toe of the slope increases the possibilities magnitudinally. Cutting over 24,800 cubic yards of soil and removing 119 trees is a considerable disturbance. So again, I'm wondering what assurances are being given to the property owners on Burt Drive. Now, they're going to hang their hats on the basis that they're going to use controlled cuts. And they probably will. But they're still cutting soil. They're still taking soil out. In order to exercise control, you have to move soil. The primary, again, studies show that the primary activities causing slides in Pennsylvania are, number one, excavation in an unstable slope. That will happen. Overuse of fill material. That will happen. Disruption of the surface or subsurface. That will happen. Removal of trees at the base of the slope. That will happen. Materials at the base of the slope. That will happen. Vibrations from heavy traffic or machinery. That will happen. Improper use of pipelines, haphazard construction, drainage, driving POW. We don't know if any of that's going to happen. We know they're putting POW in. They say they're not driving, but they will be drilling. The POW has to get in there some way. So they're going to be drilling deep into the soil, deep into the earth. Just for the record, if you have walked the property, you will see, if you go walk the property, you will see the seeps that I was talking about. You will see humic ground. You will see leaning trees, loose soil, excess of fallen trees, exposed roots, scarcity of vegetation, dammed soils at the base of the trees. And remember that a large portion of this property exceeds the 25, actually into 35% threshold. Ignoring these facts, the Planning Commission was split, but forwarded this project to council. I most assuredly want to know what assurance are going to be given to the property owners above the site. And as I shared earlier, the studies indicate that under natural conditions, landslides are rare in areas such as this. They also reveal that disturbance
at the toe increases it magnitudinally. Remember that, because that's important. Because I don't think, the reason that's so important is, I don't think you will be able to hang your hat on an act of God should something happen, should a problem occur with any of these properties. And I believe with all that I've read, and I've done my studies on it, I've done my homework, there is a distinct possibility that there will be land disturbance. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Robert Serafini?
Good evening. My name is Robert Serafini. I am a Monroeville resident. I'm going to further elaborate on the temple at the Aber Creek Road. I don't know if you noticed it, but when the chief mentioned the state trooper, his name was Serafini, so be careful.
Okay, Bob.
That's my relative. Okay. Early on in this has been going on for quite a few years. The three of us have been up here quite often at with the engineers upstairs on the second floor. We asked a question many years ago, will explosives be used on this hillside? We were told then, no. They could talk to the people at the temple, and they said no also. But last Thursday, when we were at the planning meeting in the hall, it was mentioned by one of the people from the temple that if explosives weren't necessary, they would use it. So I want a confirmation on the fact that explosives, which are going to be a definite no-no on that hillside when they want to take out that rock, will not be used. So can I get that tonight, or?
That's the first time, Bob, all kidding aside, that's the first time hearing that, so I can't answer.
Well, let me just say this. The DEP regulates that type of activity. The municipalities has an ordinance in place that you're not allowed to store any of those on site when they're not in use. But the DEP has jurisdiction over that, not the municipality. So if they chose to do it, that's the first I've heard about it. They would have to get a permit through the DEP to do that.
Because it was mentioned during the planning meeting afterwards, recess, that if it was necessary, they would use it. Now, all this disturbance on the hillside is definitely going to cause a problem, and this is by far, in my opinion, the worst thing that could happen to that hillside, is if they use dynamite. And I think before anybody even talks about it, it should be stated that's a no-no. I got many other things, Mayor.
Go ahead, Bob. Your
Okay.
time.
Okay. Will the timbering and harvesting of trees be confined to parcel number 3, where the new temple, driveway, and parking area will be built? That is number 5 on that list, and it's 12-4 sub. I want to know if all the timbering will be confined to that area, not going out to exceed anything, like to give them carte blanche since they have this and be used on any of the other areas.
The majority of the timbering will occur on the parcel 3, which will be developed for the temple driveway and the parking area.
Majority doesn't sound like all of it,
We can confirm that at Tuesday's night hearing.
okay? Because I don't like majority, I like all.
Understood.
Okay, now, one of the other questions I have is 12-4-C, which is number 3 on the temple. Why does the temple of the height, the header room, and steeple need to exceed the allowable 35-foot? No one's ever asked that question. Why do they want it, and why is it being allowed? That's another question I have.
According to the zoning ordinance, as
Could
long
you
as the
speak
buil-
into a microphone?
I'm sorry. According to the zoning ordinance, as long as the structure is set back for 1 foot for each foot that they're above the required height of the R2S district, which the maximum height in that district is 35 feet for a building. As long as they step the building back 1 linear foot for each foot that they're up above that height, then council can approve that as a conditional use application.
Okay, council can approve it, but by exceeding the height limitations, that raises the fact, I don't know what they're putting in that steeple on the top of the spire, on top of the temple, where they're going to put lights, which I think they are, or if they're going to put a bell. Now, the higher they put it, the closer it comes to Burt Drive. Now, I think lighting up Burt Drive is not necessary. And like I say, by exceeding the Temple's variance, I think that's what they're going to do, light up Burt Drive. And I don't think that should be allowed either.
Mark, is there any restriction,
There
once
is-
you get to that height, is there a restriction on lighting?
There is a restriction.
I was just going to say that.
The site is required to provide .5-foot candles of illumination for safety, for parking, walking to and from the structures. At no time can that lighting escape the perimeter of parcel 3 that would adversely affect Burt Drive. If you look at the photometric plan on the site plan that was provided by Martha Freck from Streamlined Engineering, it shows that the foot candles will not escape parcel 3, and they cannot under ordinance.
What about the spire? Maybe they want that lit up.
Ma'am, if you want to address, you didn't have to come on up to the microphone. We can't hear you.
We just can't hear you.
That question was, I believe that question was at the Planning Commission, asked at the Planning Commission, and Ragu.
What was the question, Mark? I didn't hear it.
The question was asked
Was
to.
never asked.
Okay.
I don't believe it was ever asked.
Okay. I thought it was, and I thought he answered affirmatively that there would be a light on the steeple.
Mark, I believe you are correct that he
Yeah.
did ask, and he did affirm that there would be lighting on the spire.
Okay, how about any kind of bells or anything of that sort?
I don't think that question was ever asked at the Planning Commission.
Will there be?
We'll ask that at Tuesday night's hearing.
Okay. Okay, more questions, Mayor.
Sure.
Okay. That answers the spire. Dynamite.
Council, keep in mind, you can place conditions over and above what's currently existing in the resolution if you choose to do so. It would have to be agreed upon by the applicant. If he chooses not to agree upon it, then he can appeal your conditions you set forth on these 5 applications. You do have that option.
Okay. Last but not least, my biggest problem is with the with the driveway. I don't think anybody needs a 1,450-foot driveway coming onto Northern Pike, which is probably where most of the trees are going to be harvested. There is already substantial water seepage from that property on Northern Pike. I mean, it's bad. Even in the wintertime right now, as Ralph stated on his story, that the salt trucks have to go up the hill because they cannot go down the hill, because one has already spun out and had an accident there. And that's a salt truck. Now, visibility. Joe, can I have that pictures from the planning meeting, if I may, please? You still have that?
Yes, stand by, please.
Thank you, sir. Okay, these are some pictures of Northern Pike. Do you see it coming down here where where the bulldozer is? That's where the road's going to come out. Now, can I have another picture, Joe? Now, as you can see, coming down here, you're coming down a pretty good slope. Now, the biggest picture coming down here, if you're going up there and coming out of that driveway, it's almost, you can't see it. Because if you make a left-hand turn and go up that hill, somebody's going to die, like Ralph said, coming around that corner. Can I have the other picture, please, Joe? Okay, that's the old one. Can I have the one that shows the upper hill? Thank you. That one, as you can see, look how close that hill it comes out there. If you're coming 40 miles an hour around that bend on the upper part of there and coming down to that driveway, there's no way in heck anybody can stop without hitting. Now, I just don't see how it could possibly be anything but unsafe. I don't know when the last traffic study was done, which from one of my meetings, I think it was 2 years ago. It was based on 35 people going up and down that road coming out there. Now, they made a seating arrangement on this church for 271, which may be visiting people. I don't know, because they also stated the fact they don't intend to exceed 35 to 50 people in their membership. Now, not having 35 to 50 people in excess of that number for a membership and wanting to construct a driveway, which in my estimation, and I've heard, is going to cost well over $1 million. Now, coming out there They're going to come down on a slope, the last 650 foot of that driveway on our downhill slope, which is further going to add water to that road. There's no way in heck you could not go down to Northern Pike there at that road. Like I said, there's already sufficient water on that Northern Pike from the seepage already. We're going to add to it by cutting, 119 trees? And they're going to put up walls and everything else? It just don't make sense.
Mayor, I just have a question for you and Mr. Shufo. I was at that last meeting, and I may have heard this wrong. Didn't PennDOT say that they did a study and it's okay?
PennDOT did a study, and they did not say it was okay. I don't believe it was said that it was okay. Am I correct?
It required a HOP, highway occupancy permit, because Northern Pike is a state road. This is considered a local driveway. They did their analysis, and they determined that the site visibility or the site distance to the left and right, with the exception of trimming the tree, was sufficient for a local driveway based on the HOP.
Yeah, if I can interrupt for just a second. We had a meeting yesterday here with a bunch of folks concerning Northern Pike on a different issue, and mostly about the water, the gas, so on and so forth. And there were 3 folks here from PennDOT, and I talked to each one of them, and they had no idea about this road going in there. So evidently there was a lack of communication somewhere along the way. And if you recall at that planning meeting, I think someone, Mr. Williams may have said, well, maybe we could put up a sign saying right turn only coming out of there. And my statement today, which I wasn't allowed to say anything then, would be the only thing that's going to change is that bus coming out of there is going to get hit in the back instead of on the other side. It's a matter of, it just makes no sense, so I agree with you.
And the fact remains, too, 3 to 4 buses per year is what was also stated that they have at that temple. Now, I mean, to do this for 3 to 4, they can enlarge that driveway on Aber Creek Road to take the buses up there if they say they have to go up to the field and turn around. It's also stated in the planning meeting, Paul stated the fact that they got a fire truck up there. If you can get a fire truck up there, you sure as heck can get a bus up there. I mean, I just don't see, if those bus drivers didn't know how to damn drive a bus, that's their problem.
Well, just so you know, put it this way, Mr. Serafini, it's a recommendation that they got from the Planning Commission. This council can either accept or reject any or all of the proposals set forth, and that's why you're...
Prior to the meeting, Mr. Mayor, my ward chairman showed me a letter. May I ask him to read it in the...
Oh, sure, I will be glad. Always remember this, and this is important for all you people out there. As your councilman, I have yet had the opportunity to sit down with my fellow councilmen and lady and discuss this, and I plan on doing it before the next Tuesday meeting. But I'd like to read a couple sentences here. Mr. Pittman, you'll enjoy this, I'm sure. This was a letter from an outside engineering firm to Mr. Hugus, and I'll just read a couple lines. In summary, the currently proposed project with significant grading will be constructed in a landslide-prone area. Further additional landslide-prone areas are located upslope of the planned development. As such, there is an inherent risk of landslide activity unrelated to the planned development on property upslope of the site. So obviously, that's a pretty important statement.
I think it is, too. Now, my last statement I want to make tonight, I don't know how many people on the council here have visited the site. I know Mr. Johns is down there quite often because he's very diligent with the gas leak and everything. I'm asking all of you people, before you vote Tuesday night, please take a walk on the site. You have the paperwork from the engineers and everything. Use your eyes and judge for yourself the dangers of that and the problems with that.
Bob, the buses today, before that road is built, do they go up through Avers Creek and come up through? Is that how they have
The
access?
4 buses that they get a year, 3, 4 buses, they said goes to Aber Creek Road, and then they went up to the field and made a turn in the field at the ball field up above there and came back down. It's about a block up. Go down and then come up the other way. Now, my suggestion many, I think, I can't remember how many months ago, was to widen the existing driveway. Widen that and make a bigger inverted V to it and allow the traffic to go up that way. I mean, I don't think you need a 1,450-foot driveway going out onto Northern Pike to create hell and havoc.
Are they able to drive the buses through the residential area there?
There is no residential area going from Northern Pike to the temple.
Okay.
There is no, it's just, it
no
is a
exit.
windy road, I agree with that. But, you know, you have school buses and everything else use it. I don't know why in the heck a couple, 4 buses a year can't use it too. Now, for 35, 50 people to inconvenience everybody on this board, in this room, to have that problem on Northern Pike, I don't see it. Not for 35, 50 people. I'm for majority rules all the time, and we are the majority. Thank you.
Would the residents be willing to accept the fact that they're able to drive their buses up Burt Drive and to the site, or?
No.
It doesn't go that way.
Can't do that?
Abers Creek.
Davis Creek Road.
I visited the site also with
That I am
Councilman
glad of,
Jones,
Steve, thank you.
and I agree that it looks hazardous to me on the approach coming out onto
On to Northern Pike.
Northern Pike.
There's no doubt about it. I showed the pictures, but I would request that everybody do an on-site investigation of their own. Because really, you are the ones that are going to be deciding this on Tuesday. I mean, we can only make recommendations here, and you decide it. And we voted you in, we can vote you out too.
That sounds fair.
So be it.
Well, if I can, Bob, anything else for us, Bob, because I
No,
do have
sir,
a
that was done,
comment.
Mayor.
I do have a comment on this as well, and what Jimmy wrote into the record, I was certainly going to do that as well at my report, but one better than that, I'm going to recommend that council turn down all the applications, for the simple fact is, if you go and remember the old William Penn Highway issue that we have down there, that was supposed to be a private issue between all parties, and the municipality got sued. For the simple fact is, we approved that issue down there. If you remember, we're going back years ago. Now, if we approve any of these issues, even though, let's just say their further landslide does come down from the properties up above, it's supposed to be a private issue between the temple and any residents it affects, but guess who gets sued as well? This municipality does, because we approved it. So I am recommending to all 7 of you, I am begging you to say no to the entire project. It is dangerous, it's in a landslide area. I understand what the engineer said, but that one statement that Jim read into the record, I think is key for us to say no.
One other thing, just real quick. Seeing as how I spend half my life on that hillside, and I do mean that because of the water problems down there in the gas line, right where the driveway is going to come out, you can't see it on that pictures they were shown, but right below that, the driveway's here, right below that is, if you recall, the flowers of the attic building right there. That section of highway is leaning this way. The roadway is leaning. And if you were to go down and look, all the guardrails are leaning over this way. It's just a matter of time that road's going to go whoosh, down over. With that, I'm done.
Okay, Erica Roberts, please. I'll get to anybody else. I'm just going over the list with the folks that signed in.
Okay, my name is Erica Roberts, and I am a resident of Monroeville, and I do live on Burt Drive, and I'm here tonight as a concerned taxpayer. I unfortunately was not able to attend the last meeting, so I just wanted to express my concern because, like I said, I do live on Burt Drive. This is something that's, directly behind me, and I feel that affects, my husband and my 3 small children. I actually asked my husband to take a picture, and I tried to see before the meeting if I could have it sent so we could see it on the big picture, but they said we couldn't. They said possibly I could send it to someone so they could show on Tuesday. Is it okay if I just give you my phone? Do you want to? Is this a picture of my yard? I literally want you to see how you can see we don't have much backyard. We live on Burt Drive, the side where we can basically, where the hillside is, and you see our little fenced-in area, and then there's our little fence, and then it just drops. And I don't know how much of that you can see, but if it goes off, you just hit the button. Okay. You could just pass it along. But my concern, again, is my home. My home. That's why I'm here. I'm concerned. I'm not an engineer. I did a little research, and I was reading about the Pittsburgh red beds. before I came, and I guess I have a couple questions for the engineers. I'm hoping they could elaborate and tell me why they think it would be a good idea to build, knowing the slope and the grade, and the fact that we do have red beds and a lot of other things I didn't even know about. He was mentioning the different soil. Why would that be okay for them to do that on Abers Creek? If the engineers wanted to address.
I will refer this to Mr. Biko, who's the geotechnical engineer of the group.
State your name for the record, sir.
My name is Doug Beatco. I'm the geotechnical engineer for the municipality. I looked at all of the engineering information that was submitted by the Temples team, and, you know, while that development is located in a landslide-prone area, there are engineering controls that can be put in place so as to not increase the risk to the development on top of the hill. Now, there is an inherent risk there. There could be landslides that occur regardless of whether this temple is built or not, okay? But they could very well construct that temple without increasing the risk, assuming the controls are put in place.
May I ask a question? Is your contention then?
You want to come up to the microphone, please?
You have to.
Use that one.
That microphone's.
Is your contention then that all these studies that state that disturbance at the toe most certainly contributes to landslides? You're disputing that?
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that with the proper engineering controls in place and with the proper design approach, that those issues can be designed around. And that's what they have submitted. That's what I'm saying.
Then you are disputing it, because there's disturbance at the toe. That's what the studies indicate, point blank.
And not to put you-
You're referencing a property after work. I'm referencing a property during the work. There's a huge difference there. Any disturbance at the toe, you have to disturb at the toe to do anything, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Disturbance at the toe is the number one cause of landslides in the state of Pennsylvania, right or wrong?
According to the plan submitted by...
Yes or no?
I'm not going to debate you.
Yeah, let's don't debate, guys. I don't want to do that. But my question is, and again, then why would this be put in there? As such, there's an inherent risk of landslide activity unrelated to the planned development on the property upslope of the site. What you basically said that could happen anyway, correct? But all this work, and I'm agreeing with our residents, don't you think that that's going to make it worse when
No.
you're taking all the tree? You can legitimately say no.
No.
Just for the record. Again, under natural conditions, landslides in this type of area are rare. It stood the test of time all these years. If something should occur now, you will not hang your hat on an act of God.
Did they answer your questions, Eric?
I think so. I mean, like I said, my concern is if we know that it's rare, but if you're aggravating it by going in and you're moving all this dirt, you're moving all these trees, you're just bound, something's bound to happen. You can't guarantee that nothing will happen. And then my concern is who looks out for us, the homeowners. So apparently there's a retaining wall. Is that retaining wall for me as a homeowner, or is that retaining wall for the temple? What is the purpose of the retaining wall? Where's my assurance as far as did you guys see my home? And that's fine. That's fine. We love our deck. We enjoy sitting out there and seeing the foliage, and we enjoy our deck. It's like an extra room in our home. We eat dinners and lunch, and we enjoy it. That's not the issue. The issue is the safety of my home and how we will be able to enjoy our deck after this process takes place. And if this process takes place, and it's supposed to be a 5-year process, I'm concerned about the noise. I'm concerned about the lighting. Like I said, I have 3 children. Will we be able to see that lighting in our home? The noise. We already hear everything that goes down Northern Pike and on 22. I don't even have to turn the news on. So there was an accident. I can hear it. So I can only imagine being at home in the summer and hearing all this construction for 5 years. And then, like I said, I wanted to know about the retaining wall and who the retaining wall is built for. Is that built to protect me as a homeowner, or is that built for the temple to protect them and their property?
The retaining wall would be built on the front end of the project in order to allow the excavation to take place below it while protecting everything that was upslope.
Can I just ask this, and this is for the engineer, and I'm not trying to put you guys on the spot because I just don't know. Let's just say 2 years from now, 3 years from now, there is a landslide. Would it be able, any way to determine, was it because it was just natural, or is it because of all the work that was done? Is there any way to determine that? Because again, lawsuits will go, as you well know.
It's hard to say. It's hard to play the what-if game. But
But
there's...
it's not really what if, but let's just say a landslide happens. Can you determine, was it because just natural causes, act of God, if you will, or is it because the land was disturbed? I guess that's the question for me. Because again,
You could apply engineering principles to come up with the proximate cause of...
that's what I
of
needed
slide.
to know. I did not know that. Thank you, sir. Did that help you a little bit?
It did. So again, I just, hope that as you guys vote and decide what you're going to do, you just think about the many citizens that this affects. Turnpike Gardens, we have over 300 homes in our plan. So, just me being a citizen that lives on Burt Drive, I hope you guys will consider it and just keep us in mind. We're concerned about our properties. I just want to make sure my home and my family are safe and my neighbors as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the folks that had signed in. So anybody else would like to address, please come on up one at a time, please.
Harvey Schwartz,
Hi,
resident of Monroeville.
Will you sign in, Harv? Please.
I only got a third-grade education, so.
Stop it.
Well, I am not
Thank you.
being facetious. I am surprised at the amount of engineering knowledge that I have heard here today. Don't laugh, Counselor, it's your turn. I think that these applications violate the Second Amendment to the Constitution. I think that this council is looking at sponsoring a religious organization. Counselor?
What do you mean that they're sponsoring a religious?
The passage of any variance will provide a de facto sponsorship of a religious organization in violation of the Second Amendment.
I disagree. I think that we have an application regardless of who the applicant is. They come in, they review the application. You look at the geotechnical properties of the area. We have experts coming in, reviewing those, and then this council looks at our ordinance and makes a determination of whether or not it complies with our ordinance and whether it's permissible. And beyond that, and asking, and because it's a conditional use, if they want to set additional conditions, they don't have to pass it. We don't know what the outcome is yet. Everybody's assuming you know what the outcome is, and there hasn't been a vote. But I think every applicant would be treated the same way coming through, regardless of what national origin, religion, anything of the sort.
Counselor, I beg to differ with you. How long has this ordinance been on the books?
Which ordinance?
The zoning ordinances that are up for grabs here.
The first zoning.
December 1983.
Okay, in that time,
No, but the zoning ordinance was
Well,
adopted well before that,
Can I-
and there's been several amendments.
Yeah, I mean, the first ordinance was adopted in 52, but can I make a point of clarification? There's no variances whatsoever being awarded by this council.
Correct.
there are no variances. That
This
step
didn't go
back
through
into
the zoning
30
hearing board. This went through the planning commission. A variance has a different standard, and this came through the process of the planning commission now to council. If you're going through for a variance, you'd go through the zoning hearing board. Council would not have a determination at that point.
So there is no variance.
Harvey, are you referring to the height of the steeple?
Well, I was just about to ask about that.
Conditional uses, I think.
The height of the steeple is considered a conditional use application, and like I explained before, as long as the applicant moves the building back 1 lineal foot, for each foot they're above the 35-foot height limitation in that zoning district, then council can award that as a conditional use.
So what they're saying is, it's not a mandatory, they may award it. However, they're meeting the requirement as the ordinance was defined. It doesn't mean that council has to agree with it and award it, but at the same time, they can go out and do it. It just depends on, they meet the requirements, though, of the ordinance.
They meet the requirements of the ordinance.
Correct.
But what I am saying is, in essence, that this group is a non-profit group, okay, which has certain exemptions and protections
Okay?
under the Constitution of the United States. It has come into a piece of property with the full knowledge of what the conditional uses limitations were on that property. Its application to waive or change those things, I feel, is improper, placed before the council, placed before the planning commission, simply because it would construe a potential violation of the Second Amendment to the Constitution, the Religious Freedoms Clause. By changing the
I think you mean First Amendment, too.
First Amendment is freedom of speech.
Correct.
Okay, what's Second Amendment?
I believe the First Amendment is also,
Does it cover, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I may,
that's okay.
I didn't have a chance. Like I said, I'm a kid with a third
The
grade
Second Amendment's
education.
right to bear arms, I believe.
You're
But
right, you're right.
It was.
Regardless, I know what you
You're
meant.
right, you're right. First Amendment, you're right, you're right. That was a later portion of the argument. But I really, truly believe.
I hope we don't go down that road.
Oh, you'd be surprised, Mr. Little. I've been down a lot of roads. I believe that this opens this council and the borough to some litigation based on it providing sponsorship to this specific group. You have a perfect right to disagree. This is one of the things your 5 or 7 years of legal education provides you with. And I understand that, you know. And I may talk to my friend, Mr. Walczek, and we will, you know, see what he says about it.
Well, I disagree in another sense, that if you had any church coming in for any steeple or height, request to put in a steeple, a spire, we're not treating it, or if it's a cell tower. So now you have something just as high, or an antenna. I mean, regardless of what it is, we're just looking purely at the height and the amount of space that they have and whether you fit in the parameters of the ordinance. I don't care what it is and who's doing what they're doing with it. What I care about is if you're hitting the elements of the ordinance.
Oh, Counselor, I beg to differ with you because there is a different status. In essence, the status here revolves around its non-profit protections and its guarantees. And in essence, I believe that by a de facto grant of this, you provide sponsorship.
Well, I don't think there was any de facto grant. There hasn't been any grant.
Not at this point.
There was a recommendation by the
Not at
planning
this
commission.
point. I am pointing out that the potential of a grant may violate the First Amendment to the Constitution.
I
Now,
disagree
like I said, I'm not an
wholeheartedly.
engineer. I'm not an engineer. Nobody here is arguing with all the engineering studies. But bear with me. You know, I did learn to read in Brooklyn's city schools. Didn't go too far. Did hit a civics class where I learned a little about these things and made a couple of presentations on them. But, now being a resident of that nefarious street called Burt Drive, and having the pleasure of calling Mr. Cufo up 3 times a month, 4 times a month.
Change your name to Smith.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing it, Mark. Trying to get such a little thing done as the damn grass cut, okay? By the same organization. By trying to get a fence repaired by this same organization. And getting the lovely, lovely response of having that fence patched together with 7 honeysuckle branches right in front of my home, so that I would not see the falling tree. I may have some insights that nobody besides, well, 1, 2, 3 people there and Counselor Johns may know about. I have been told by that organization that the only way you can make change is to prostrate yourself down and pray. Well, I don't do too well on my knees. So I think that I will look at other means of dealing with this. I don't see any rationale, and believe me, I'm not against any religion whatsoever, being a devout practicing coward myself. But I do believe that this group knew what their percentage of land was when they bought this property. And we will see many, many more applications, further changes on this property as time goes by. So any granting of permission will have a number of other applications, simply because that's the way it goes. And now the question about the use of Burt Drive as a driveway takes us well out of the way. You know, why can't they use Avery's Creek Road? You know, there's just no rationale for what is presented in these proposals. No, there's no sense of my belaboring this issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave the floor open.
Ralph Gricko, resident of Monroeville. This project is going to cost somewhere between $5 and $7 million, they estimate. And there's going to be a bond, I think, what's the bond, Mark?
It's 110%.
110%. Okay, and they're doing it in 5 phases. 5 phases?
5 years.
Oh,
It'll be a
5
5-year
years.
phase development.
Okay. There's something here just doesn't make sense to me. They claim that there's 45 to 35 cars going to be using this road, okay? Yet they built this building so they can put a 3rd floor on it. What does that tell you? How much expansion is going to go on afterwards that they'll be back so they can build even more? I'd like you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
I tried a few times.
I know you did. If you'll please sign in and then state your name for the record.
Okay,
And welcome.
thank you. My name is Marilyn Goldstein, and I'm a resident of Turnpike Gardens. And I know this lady here, she has no land to spare. She can't give you a foot of her backyard if it's locked. And I don't know her, but I know her house. And I came here tonight to discuss the driveway. Many years ago, there was a project on Route 22, and many, many people found Northern Pike. And when I come from Murraysville every morning or every afternoon, and I get into the left turning lane or storage lane to go up Northern Pike, there isn't enough room for all the cars that go up Northern Pike. And nobody mentioned after they were discussing what the engineers say, that it's shady there. You never have the sun on Northern Pike where they want to put the driveway. And it's true, it stays icy. I live in Turnpike Gardens since 1980. And I can't use it so many days in the wintertime. And that's the reason I came tonight, because it's such a poor choice of a driveway. I don't know anything about the temple. I can't talk about it, but I certainly can talk about the driveway. It's in a bad place, a curved road, and I think you ought to think a second time before you vote for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave the floor open. Please sign in, state your name for the record.
My name is Angie Griffith. I've been a resident of Monroeville for 43 years and a resident of Turnpike Gardens for 43 years. And my first question is, I said 43 years, and it was 43 years ago this question came up when the realtor was taking us through our neighborhood, or Turnpike Gardens. He expressed that this is a wonderful neighborhood. It's surrounded by conservancy. No one will ever be able to build here. So my question is, and I looked up conservancy, and I don't quite understand how it works, that you can change conservancy to residential. I thought it said you couldn't build on conservancy. Is it no longer conservancy, or is it still conservancy?
Property is zoned a combination of R2 residential and S conservancy. Under Table 201 of our zoning ordinance, it gives you your permitted and your conditional uses that are allowed within every zoning district. In the zoning district of S conservancy, a church or a school is considered a conditional use application, as well as an R2 zoning district.
Okay.
So there is development permitted within that S conservancy zoning district.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? So if this was anything other than a religious, this was a business, this would even be a question.
This was a commercial entity trying to build a warehouse or something, wouldn't be permitted. We wouldn't even be sitting here tonight. The application would have never moved forward to you guys at all.
That brings up the question of church. I'm confused about this, too. North American Martyrs doesn't have North American Martyrs Incorporated after it, right? So with incorporated after their name, what does that mean? I thought incorporated, you made a profit if you were incorporated.
I'm going to leave that up to Ms. Dice to answer that question.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you are making a profit. However,
Are you making money, though?
I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, who are the owners of the property?
Shri Shirdi Sai Baba Temple Incorporated.
We've already deemed at some point that this is for religious purposes and reflecting that it is in fact a church or a temple and fitting in within those parameters because it was already built.
What does it make it legal that it's, I mean, if you lived in another city, would they consider that too?
Well, we can't look at other cities' regulations. We have to kind of keep
Yours are
within
different than
ours.
other cities.
Well, every municipality could have a different.
Well, what about
zoning
a
ordinance.
federal law? I mean, if you're incorporated, do you have to pay taxes?
Well, it depends on what type of incorporation. There's a lot of different types of, I don't know if they're, a nonprofit corporation. I don't know what type of entity it is.
Have you ever looked at their website?
I've never looked at their website.
I did a long time ago. I mean, when this first came about. And I think they do hold, or weddings. They have activities, okay? So whenever they talked about this driveway and about 5 buses coming, and I'm just a common sense person. I'm not analytic at all. And it just struck me as funny. Well, if it's only 5 buses, what would be the big deal of making a driveway? And then I got to thinking, well, you have all these, I guess you're going to have logging trucks, you're going to have construction vehicles, you're going to have soil removed from there, so you'll have those, you'll have concrete, trucks coming with concrete, steel, things of that sort. But I found it kind of insulting that the Streamline engineer used that as a reason to change the driveway for the 5 buses. I thought, I almost felt insulted, like, well, kind of my intelligence is being a little insulted that that's the reason they want the driveway there. The other thing is, if you've never, I am a common sense person, so I lived there for 43 years, and probably 30 of those years, every weekend we drove back to Jennerstown and we took Route 22. And even when my kids were young, we were coming down from Murraysville and the very first hill that comes down to where the intersection is for Abers Creek, that you can get on Abers Creek and Northern Pike. They'd say, there's our house, because, you can almost see our house, but you couldn't quite, because the one neighbor who is here is the house at the top of the street, and we're 2 houses down. And it was exciting to know you're way at the top of this hill, way at the top of this hill. And if anyone has ever come down from Murraysville and looked at that hill, your common sense would have to tell you that you can't build something like that on that hill. I mean, The other thing is, I looked up the geographical survey. I was trying to look up a geographical survey from Monroeville. And, I was looking up Conservancy. The Allegheny County Conservancy is what I got onto. And it said, I couldn't find Monroeville, but I could find Murraysville. And I started to read this article, and it said about Murraysville, you can see all the greenery left in Murraysville. And there was a section of Monroeville on there, and guess what section it was? It was this section where Northern Pike is. And it said that you can see most of Monroeville is residential, but there's this one green area between the Turnpike and Abers Creek. And that this area should be kept green for the sake of Abers Creek, because Abers Creek flows in, Abers Creek and another creek flows into the Mon River. And it's this hillside actually protects the aquatic life in Abers Creek. And no one probably knew that. I didn't know that. And I found that to be kind of interesting. And there's supposed to be some type of dry pond on this property that's supposed to catch the water coming down, I guess. And the other day I thought about this when we had this just real rapid downpour, like boom, it came down. And I thought of these areas that, there seems to be more rain in some areas lately. And one area got 5 inches of rain in an hour, and it flooded and everything. And I thought, well, what if they're in the middle of one of these projects and we get one of these torrential rains, And so I personally just want to say, I believe the people who want this temple, I think we all worship the same God, and I think that Their God tells them they want this temple, and they should have a temple. But my God tells me they should have a temple, but not where it is, where they want it to be. I think my God's telling me there could be other things. My same God is telling me that there could be incidents that you could not turn around. And the geotech, I know a geotech, my son's a geotech. And, you know, you mentioned that.
Please talk into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. You mentioned that I think they're almost your exact words. These walls, I forgot your exact words, are proven to work, okay? But you didn't give a percentage, because they aren't proven to work 100% of the time. There is a percentage, I'm sure. And I don't know if you know it, but there already was a landslide at the bottom, at the driveway where the temple is now. Did anyone know there was one landslide there already? You did? Okay. Well, there already was. So I don't know if that's the reason they're not using that driveway either. I do have another question. This is more a question than I know I'm rattling on. It came to me. I don't have anything written down. I think this was in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken, that there was somebody did want to build on that property, and I think it was a nursing home or something maybe. And they were denied because it was landslide prone. And I thought too, well, if it was they were denied and it was landslide prone, shouldn't that set precedent for now? And it should be in the records of this happening. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll open up to anybody who would like to address council.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Robert Heiss, and I do live in Monroeville. And I just wanted to, I didn't even plan on saying anything tonight. What goes on with that temple and with Turnpike Gardens has no effect on me, but I feel for these people. I want to say that there was a landslide there, and it was a significant slide. Mr. Duncan, you would probably remember about 15 years ago. How I remember it is I'm a very proud member of Number 4 Fire Company, and we were called. I was a captain then. I ended up with a crew having to babysit that until somebody from the state or whoever, and I think people from your people came out. Basically, it was a rainstorm, and we got called that there was a slide there. And when we got there, it was a significant slide. Rocks came down, soil came down, it was like lava. And a lot of the trees came down, and when the police came, I made the statement to the police, look, I'm not an engineer, and I'm not a geologist, but I really think you need to talk to somebody at the municipal building, the engineering department, have them look at this, because I'm a novice at this, but it doesn't look safe to me. They said they would. Now, that was years ago. The mess got cleaned up, and so be it. But that ground's bad there. And if you're coming from the old Northern Pike Elementary School, I think there's a church in there now. If you're heading down Northern Pike to the left-hand side, there's a cute little Cape Cod house Craftsman built when Turnpike Gardens went up. That house settled out. I'm surprised they didn't tear it down. They braced it up and put a new foundation under it. You know the one I'm talking about,
Yes, I
Mr.
do.
Johns?
Yes, I do.
Plus, so, you know, look, I have all the respect for engineers. I'm a humble little remodeling contractor. I've been involved with some retaining walls, but nothing of this sort. But I've been around here a long time, and I've seen retaining walls last the test of time. I've seen them fail. So, you know, again, I didn't plan on saying anything, but I deal in facts. I don't deal in fiction. All I know is that I was there that night for about 3 hours when part of that hillside came down and blocked the one lane on Northern Pike. And how that section of Northern Pike doesn't slide over the hill, I'll never know. And like I said, I have no real interest in it, but I do feel for those people in Turnpike Gardens. They're good people, and it's a nice plant. So as far as the engineering side of it goes, and I don't mean this to be insulting or curt, but if you watch the History Channel, Modern Marvels, there's a series on about engineering disasters. So I don't care how many slide rules, and I don't care how much engineering goes into a project, nothing is foolproof. When you get on Northern Pike after a rain, the water's coming off of that hill like crazy. Thank you.
Once again, I'll leave it open.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is John Yakum. I am a resident of Monroeville. Members of council, Manager Little, Solicitor Dice, good evening to all of you. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask for your indulgence this evening. You asked that the topic of the investigations and such no longer be discussed publicly. I believe as a resident, I can discuss whatever I feel like I want to discuss from this podium, and you have upheld that rule in the past. I also understand your reluctance to answer some of my questions, but I hope you do, in light of the fact that last month, Manager Little brought this topic up, and this evening, Chief Cole brought it up regarding the clean investigation. We have heard from the Attorney General, the Office of Civil Rights, both local newspapers, the Daily Investigation, and last month, Manager Little and the CSI report. And this evening, the PSP and their clean audit. They all concluded some very similar things. That members of our community accessed confidential information. Mr. Mayor, can you tell me what policies and procedures have been put into place to prevent these egregious breaches of privacy, whether accidental or intentional, as Mr. Little alluded to last week, from ever occurring again? I'm sorry, last month.
As I stated, John, and I know that you like to come up and poke at us, and I'm going to be very blunt here. I made it very clear we can't respond, and I know you have issues with Mr. Harvey, and a lot of your stuff's very personal. Yeah, it is, John. Let's just be honest. You want to be honest? I'm being honest here. I have no issue. You can bring up any issue you choose. But you know we can't respond because of the lawsuits.
Well,
you know that.
The policies and procedures certainly should be public information.
Again, there are did you hear what Chief Cole said?
Yes, I heard that what PSP said was, as of February, there was no longer any leaking occurring because it was stopped. But what policies were put in place to prevent that from occurring again? Were there any?
I don't have any control on that. I don't work in that area.
Okay.
But again, what the state police said, there are none, I assume, and I'm just assuming because I don't know firsthand, but all the procedures have been put in place, whatever it is.
Okay, so if we did a right to know request for those policies and procedures, they do exist.
I don't know that, but I don't know that, so I'll just be very blunt about that.
Can you tell me if any security features are now in place to prevent the accidental violation of the privacy?
On the security features again, John, it's not my area of expertise.
Have the employees and the firemen, since they're not employees of the municipality, been told about the municipal computer usage policy?
John, I'm sure that's reviewed each and every year.
Okay. At last month's workshop, I asked you if you knew about a personal relationship between the investigators at CSI and any current employees involved in their investigation.
And I told you to date, I still don't know of any.
Okay. You told me you were not aware of any relationship.
I don't know that.
I asked Deputy Mayor Grishock the same thing at the council meeting. He also was unaware of any relationship. Back in April, I had asked you and Manager Little about a possible personal relationship between the investigators and any of our employees. And if my recollection is correct, you nor Manager Little would answer the question back in April.
If you remember, I wasn't responding then, and I corrected that. If you remember, I apologize for that.
Okay. And back in November, you made a big deal about the alleged relationship between former Chief Pasquarella and John Daly.
They're good friends. That's my clear understanding.
You know this personally?
Personally, no, but I got it firsthand, yes.
Firsthand, so from either Mr. Daly or Mr. Pasquarella?
Let's put it this way, I've heard the conversation, yes.
Okay. You and former Manager McKinney exchanged words during that meeting. It was quite heated. Manager McKinney tried to correct some misinformation, and you verbally attacked her. Several weeks later, she was suspended by a minority of council. We have this new investigation, which is now complete, and you and Deputy Mayor Grieshock deny any knowledge of a personal relationship. I have asked you, Manager Little, and Deputy Grieshock on multiple occasions, and you all seem to deny any knowledge of a relationship.
John, I don't know the man.
Okay. As it turns out, there is a personal relationship. This means either you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Grieshock, are lying to us, or the people around you are either lying to you or letting you stay ignorant in the face of repeated questioning.
Whatever, John.
It also appears that the current investigation was done to clear certain employees, and it was done by a personal friend of at least one of these employees. This was done at taxpayer expense, and it appears to have been done under the color of state law. This is abuse of power, and I believe that it's put the municipality in a huge legal jeopardy.
Well, as I stated to you, John, I'm not going to debate you, but just for everybody needs to know, I know you're running for office. That's at least my understanding, and you want to use the podium to run for your office. You know what, John? Why don't you just admit you have issues with Mr. Harvey? It's been real clear.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't mention Mr. Harvey at all.
I understand, but every time you take a shot at the
John,
dispatch center.
excuse me, Mayor. John, when you say personal relationship, do you mean, are they sleeping together, or?
You really think that's an appropriate question, Mr. Wilson?
Well, coming from, asking you that question,
You know what, I'm not going
absolutely.
to dignify
Who knows
that
what your
question.
motives
I'm not
are?
going to dignify that question with an answer.
Well, you know what?
Your motives are probably the same way.
I apologize to the residents for my behavior. Mr. Jacob and I do not agree on many things, and as you well know, he's certainly involved in that Monroeville Government Watch, which always seems to enjoy beating up on Monroeville, making us look worse in the paper than we already do.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't write these letters from the Attorney General. I didn't write the press releases. I didn't write the letter from the Office of Civil Rights. I didn't write the daily
Yeah, and
investigation.
if you-
And I didn't write the CSI report, and I didn't write Mr. Little's report on the CSI report.
And ladies and gentlemen, as I stated very clearly, when the lawsuits are all settled, what I am permitted as the mayor to put out publicly, I assure you, it will be done. That's all I can tell you, and I hope you will forgive me for my behavior up here. I apologize, but it's like running a finger down a chalkboard with John and I. We just don't agree. I mean, he
Mr.
has
Mayor.
his opinion, I have mine.
Mr. Mayor, I have not gotten one phone call on any of this since I've been in office. They're only concerned about moving forward. So let's get on with it. The residents want this council to go forward. They already expressed their opinion in Election Day.
Well, if we're going to go
We can
forward-
argue this until we're blue in the face, and all they want to do is move on.
Well, you
That's my message.
you did a CSI investigation after you were elected to move forward.
John, I'm really not going to engage you on that.
Okay.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, when things are cleared through the court system, whatever's permitted under the law, I assure you, it will be released. And if you all have known and should know me long enough now after 7 years sitting up in this seat, that I don't hide anything up here. You may not like or appreciate the truth, but I will always give it to you to the best of my knowledge. Would anybody else like to address council for Citizens Night? Seeing none, we're going to close that proportion of the meeting.
Mayor.
And we're going to ask for a
Mayor.
10-minute
Yeah.
break to give Sharon her fingers
Yeah, they always.
a break, if you will.
Sharon's fingers. Well, you can use.
It's kind of tough to do that all the
Just
time.
take